Just like Ross and Rachel on Friends, the Carolina Hurricanes and the Chicago Wolves, we're just taking a break.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Friday edition, part 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everydayer for making this your first listen 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I am your host, Zach Martin. I am the Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. I'm also with the Calder Times covering the Rochester Americans for next season. Also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Hurricanes podcast. And I'm also all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Very excited to bring you a double episode day on Friday. You know, you got the morning edition with Locked On New York Rangers talking about round 2 of the preview series for that. And also got a special guest, my first guest on Locked On Hurricanes as the main host. I got Andrew Rinaldi, friend of the show of here and the Surgecast. He is the Chicago Wolves beat writer over at the Calder Times with me on that side of things. And he also covers the Grand Rapids Griffins. But, that's a whole different thing for the Detroit Red Wings and all that stuff. But, Andrew, thank you for coming on. It's been so long since we've been able to talk on a podcast, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Thanks again for having me. It was it was a long time away. We have to do these more often, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I know. It's been a good bit. I think it was before the start of the season, actually. We had you on last time before the summer, before the whole, are we going to stay together? Are we not going to stay together before the little breakup? But, here we are. And, it's definitely good to have it back. I guess it's going to be a kind of like a common thing now, having you come on and talk about Chicago Wolves and all that good stuff. But, before we jump into all that stuff, today's sponsor is Monopoly Go. Game off, we got to talk more about Monopoly Go. The fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, and hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go, now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. So, Andrew, I know this whole episode, is going to be talking about the Chicago Wolves, just how their season went, independently. For this, first segment. Second segment, talking about the story of how we got back to this, how they decided to what, the time apart made the heart grow fonder, and now we're back together again. And then segment 3 is going to be talking about what to possibly expect for the Chicago Wolves for the 2024-25 season. So, Andrew, I have to ask you. I know this is, not the greatest, but this season was kind of rough for you Chicago Wolves being independent, man. Yikes.
It was, to put it mildly, it was the worst season in franchise history.
And we're not speaking of hyperboles here. It's it's pretty legit.
Yeah,
not the greatest.
Their points percentage I believe it was 419 was the worst that the franchise has ever seen. They've never missed playoffs in back-to-back years in franchise history. It did not. The entire decision to go independent was to compete for a Calder Cup, to compete for championships. Chicago went out, acquired some guys they thought were capable of doing so. Rocco Grimaldi, Chris Terry, a couple names that even Hurricanes fans might be familiar with back in the day with Chris Terry, but
yeah, it's been a bit, but yeah, it's been a bit, but yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
It's been a hot minute, yeah.
But you can't. It's filling out a roster that's going up against homegrown NHL draft picks and just filling the rosters top to bottom. This is a tall order from day one, and GM Wendell Young did the best he could with what he could, but it just did not come together the way that the Wolves had wanted it to.
Yeah, for sure. When they talk about it, you also had Jamison Reese, Vasily Ponomarev, you still had Ronan Seeley, you still had Kane's prospects, quote unquote, but it was kind of it's not the whole band. You didn't have Ryan Suzuki, Dylan Coughlin, like, you didn't have the whole who's who, even the guys over in Europe. Like, you could have had Felix Ungerstorm at one point. You could have had, all these guys like, Jan Peretz, Dominic Fenzor. You were missing a lot of bodies that you could have been like, okay, you might could have actually do something against, like the Milwaukee Admirals, the Texas Stars, like teams who were the who's who of the Central Division, even Grand Rapids, like the who's who of like guys that like, okay, we could compete. But like you said, yeah, Rocco Grimaldi and those guys could play, but it's kind of like you said, it's different just having to deal with teams who actually have all their prospects and AHL guys. Now it's just like, here's a bunch of guys and here's your sprinkle of your prospects. Like, it's like, what were the like going and just being able to watch games in person or watch it online and be able to cover the team? Like, just like, what was the whole vibe and aspects just going through the series, watching a team, go, what was it, 23-35 and 7-7 for 60 points? Like, that's a tough order, especially the fact that they just won the Calder Cup like not even 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, especially, I mean, even going back to last season or their last season affiliated. Yes, rough at the beginning of the year, really hard out of the gate until about the All-Star break. And then that second half of the season, they actually had the best record in the AHL at that time and ended up missing the playoffs by a point. And it was a tough pill to swallow for sure, but there was a lot of growth in these young guys, and you kind of figured, okay, well, if they can come to an agreement and continue to see these players down. Yeah, it wasn't great having a down year, but you can clearly see the building blocks of the foundation of something that could hopefully have seen the Wolves back in contention. And it just, they decided to go their own route with the independents. And it was, for them, it was all about player control, which is, we're going to get to that later on in this episode. But
yeah.
Zachary Sachenko ended up seeing the majority of the starts because Pyotr Kochetkov was up in Carolina. That's just the nature of the business,
Yeah.
But the Wolves are always, their mantra is to be competing for championships year in and year out. And
yeah, which is fine. I mean, that's what everyone wants to do. Like, that's just the nature of the business. But like, it's tough because like, yeah, you want to win the Calder, but you're also a development team where you got to get the guys ready for the NHL. So yeah, it's that you got to find that good balance, man. And yeah, it's just yeah. Like, I know Wendell Young, like that's tough. Like, you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna go independent, see what happens, and then it's like, not even a year later, now it's like, hey, you up? Can we, make something work together? And I mean, I know, unfortunately for us, we were on our other shows that we usually record for, and it's like right after we're done, you see the notification of like, oh, the deal's done, and it's like, great. Fantastic. You love to see it after I'm done recording. It's like, what were your initial thoughts when you saw the reports come out that it's like, yep, the Hurricanes are like, it was kind of like the worst kept secret because you kind of knew something was going to happen. Like, the Wolves are going to have an announcement. The Canes are going to have an announcement. And I know like Wednesday night, people are like, it's pretty much almost done. And you kind of already knew who it was going to be. So like, what were your thoughts over the last like 24 hours? Or kind of like seeing it like almost being legit. And then today being like, okay, here's the news. It's now official. They're back together again.
Yeah, this was the worst kept secret in the entire league. Dating back to November when Vasily Ponomarev was assigned to Chicago, that began the building blocks of repairing the relationship that was kind of burned, to the ground in the last season. And then as the year went on, the only other kind of maybe halfway intriguing option was, the Utah and Tucson, and unsure of where the affiliation was going to go there. But every other team in the league is either owned by their parent company or they have a very happy relationship with their parent team, and where in the past, the AHL has never seen this kind of stability in its leagues and in its affiliate. So
yeah,
there just really wasn't another option there for either team. Chicago didn't have another Atlanta, Vancouver, St. Louis, Vegas to jump off on. Everyone else was set, and the Hurricanes were in that same position. They couldn't pick up another affiliate because they're all like, we kind of like what we have here. So
yeah, and also too, like I know the AHL isn't too fond of, hey, we're gonna have 2 affiliates with 1 team, because then you're just overloading 1 team with two prospects, sets of prospects for different teams, and you're like, maybe pump the brakes, and then it's like, well, what if the Hurricanes add a 33rd team in the leagues? Like, we kind of like it where it's 32 and 32, where it makes it even. Like, I heard rumors of like maybe the Thunderbirds could have been an option for the Hurricanes next season because of whatever type of shenanigans or whatever it's remotely going on between them and the Blues, which at this point doesn't seem like that's really much of an issue now. Who really knows? And we saw reports today. We don't know how credible it is, but probably the Tucson Roadrunners we could become an ECHL team somehow. But like, that's a whole different story. But it's just like, yeah, it's just crazy how it's like, the Wolves are independent, the Hurricanes don't have an affiliate. Is there possible differences? And it's like, nope, we're just gonna merge back together. Like, hey, like I said, like Ross and Rachel, we were on a break.
Yeah, sometimes you need a year away to kind of clear your head and everything. But at the end of the day, again, there wasn't a lot of options for either side on this one.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, and I know there was a lot of news that came out of it. Walt Ruff, he was on top of it. Breaking down how long it is and what goes into all that aspects as well. And I know you've been on top of it too at the Calder times. And I know we both worked together. We've talked for the last few weeks of like, all right, what's going on and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, yeah, you've been on top of it, which is, really appreciative of that. Cause I know a lot of Hurricanes fans are like, come on, is this going to work and stuff like that. Of course, now we know the actual news. It goes on with all of that, which we will get to here in a second on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to a segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. We're here with Andrew Rinaldi, the beat writer of the Chicago Wolves over at the Calder Times, going over a quick segment where we're going to talk about the new affiliate deal with the Chicago Wolves. Like I said, on Thursday afternoon, it was official that they are back together, and it's not just for one season, Andrew. We're getting a multi-year deal that starts next season for the 24-25 season that goes to 26-27. Like, how does it feel seeing that it's like, okay, it's not a year-by-year basis. Like, we're actually going to get a legit multi-season agreement for the next 3 years?
This is the way I started my beat, actually. When I joined the Wolves beat, it was year 1 of the Hurricanes affiliation with them. So it kind of feels like old times, but it's good that it's not, a Band-Aid over a wound, and that there's stability in the organization for at least that time frame. What happens in 2027 is we'll cross that bridge when we get it. But it's very good for both parent club and for the AHL club as well to have that bridge maintained for those 3 years, that now you don't have to worry about it kind of kick the can down the road as it seems, but for these 3 years, you can establish a solid working relationship between these two clubs.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like I said, it's a great thing to have that stability where now it's like, it's not a year-by-year basis where you're trying to figure out what the deal is. Yeah, maybe it's not like, the Blackhawks and like and the Rockford IceHogs where it's like, oh yeah, we own you. Now it's like there is no agreement. We just own the team. So I know we're not. Maybe at some point it could possibly happen for both sides. I doubt it, but you never know. But maybe you could see a longer extension after these 3 years and stuff like that. But at least, like you said, you've got stability. You've got Hurricanes prospects for the next 3 seasons at least, which hopefully if it plays out, and I know we'll talk about certain players and all that stuff in segment 3, but that you're going to get the talent that's going to help you be competitive right off the jump, knock on wood, everything goes well and that you can see a hopeful return to the Calder Cup playoffs, which everyone in Rosemont, I know Chicago, they're technically in Rosemont, but you know how all that stuff works. You know they're going to be excited regardless at Allstate Arena to see some playoff hockey back in that building, especially with that that pregame show with all the pyrotechnics and the music. Like, how can you not be hyped for playoff hockey back in Rosemont? Hopefully, very soon. As of next year, hopefully.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible experience, honestly. When I got to my first game on the beat and they started blowing fireworks up in my face, I was like, oh, okay, this is they're built over here. So yeah, it's always an incredible, great game day experience, and yeah, it's the building when during the Calder Cup run in 2022 was just out of this world. Yeah, and despite the record this year and everything and all the drama that was going on off the ice, they still averaged more per game this season than they did during the last year of the affiliate. So the fans are still packing the house, no matter what. Yeah. This is a loyal fan base out there in Rosemont, and they're gonna love these guys coming through and wish we could stay a little longer in Chicago, but they'll love seeing them succeed in the NHL Carolina.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at the current Hurricanes roster now, you got a lot of guys from that 22 squad who won the Calder Cup with them. I mean, you got Pierre Kochetkov, Jack Drury, Jalen Chatfield, Steph Nason, who was an assistant captain for them on their cup run. Vasily Ponomarev was there for a little bit too, unfortunately, as with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I know you're not excited about that because you're like, hey, oh, great, Vasily Ponomarev's not with the team anymore, but, Jameson Reese and all that stuff. So you still got some dudes, not there much anymore, but you can see where the Wolves development, it's gotten the Hurricanes, at least 4 guys that are playing really well with the Hurricanes. So, like, do you possibly see we're back together and now we can see more developments of, that pipeline again for the Wolves going to the Hurricanes?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at what happened to a lot of these young players this year, unfortunately for Carolina. Ryan Suzuki seeing a limited role in Springfield. Jameson Reese, I feel for that kid maybe the worst of them all. He got
Charlotte did not do
it. 5 minutes in Chicago to, getting healthy scratched and 4th line if you're lucky in Springfield, to the point where Carolina had to trade him out of the organization to get him a fresh start over there with the Ottawa organization, and it's terrible. I think this kid had I know it's always tough to break a kind of roster Carolina has with just talent up and down it, but I think JMO could have developed into a really dependable utility player there for him, and the whole season was crucial for his development. And unfortunately, in a divorce, it's always the kids that hurt the most, really.
Yeah, unfortunately, for sure. I mean, even Dylan Coughlin too. Like, Coughlin played really well in Springfield, but even then, it's like, man, I know you would have loved to have him in Chicago for sure, especially on that blue line.
So when you have these guys not only playing in this organization together, but they grow and they develop. And Drury can play with Nason in Carolina because they played together and learned how to come up with the same system that was established down there in Chicago. I mean, Ryan Warsofsky was almost a carbon copy of Rod Brind'amour, and his squad played the exact same way down there in Chicago, and it was
absolute nails. Like that,
it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I loved it, and Warzy moved on to an opportunity in San Jose, and
can't blame him for that, man. Can't blame him for that.
No, absolutely. So, but having that pipeline, you've seen the benefits of it in Carolina. So you got to it's good to now have that back and to hopefully continue seeing some of these young players coming in and contributing to the Hurricanes.
Yeah, no, 100%. And speaking of that too, I know there was an extra little thing that Walt Ruff tweeted out that I think a lot of people kind of took notice on, because I quote tweeted and pointed it out. It's like it was this last paragraph, and a lot of people are like, oh. And that Carolina Hurricanes, a part of the deal, are going to see over the hockey operations decisions with the Chicago Wolves. And for those who don't really know what that technically means, Andrew, could you explain to people what it means for the Hurricanes being able to oversee the hockey operations side in decisions like that for the Chicago Wolves on the AHL side of things? For those who don't know,
it's all just about player personnel. Again, that's kind of why Chicago broke away in the first place. So it was to kind of hang on to their guys, right? And ultimately, this is just like I said, the nature of the relationship between an NHL and an AHL team. If a defenseman goes down up there in Carolina and they need a guy, they're gonna pick their guy, and that's where it begins and ends, and so they're gonna have those kind of their hands on just kind of how the roster is gonna look in Chicago, who's gonna kind of play where, and who moves up and who moves down. Now Chicago's gonna have a voice in it, of course. They're the ones that are kind of molding these guys for the Hurricanes, but at the end of the day, it's the Canes' call.
Yeah, it's like you said, the Wolves still got their head coach, they still got their GM. Wendell Young's going. They need to do what they need to do to make sure that team is good, and head coaching as well. So it's not like, oh, well, this guy has to play here, this guy has to play here. It's just like, no, we just want to make sure our guys who's are under our contract get the playing time. So it's. Yeah, so like you said, the Wolves are still going to have some control as well. It's not just you do this or we're going to just fire every coach. Like some rumors that were spread by, some one-sided writers and stuff like that, which is not going to go down that path. But everyone knows who we're talking about. It's just kind of like, come on, really? But no, I feel like it's, like you said, it's not like a complete, oh, we're going to tell you what everything you're going to do. But, we kind of want our guys to get the proper ice time, which, like you said, it's only fair. I mean, you're developing these guys for the parent club at this point.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the philosophy of the Wolves is that, they're going to compete and win hockey games. And by winning, it's going to further help, the development of these players. So
yeah,
if everyone's holding hands and, skipping through the meadows and the W's are coming, no one's gonna care.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, and also talking about prospects that need to develop, I know there's gonna be a lot of guys I know you're gonna be looking forward to. That's gonna be in Rosemont very, very soon, and we will talk about those guys in the third segment on a Friday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover on Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Welcome to a segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. We are with Chicago Wolves beat writer Andrew Rinaldi of the Calder Times. Andrew, I know we kind of like teased at the end of the second segment. We kind of talked about it through most of the episode a little bit, kind of, skirting around, guys to look out for. But I think it's time for us to be like, ooh, okay, we know how long it's going to be. What's kind of part of the deal is, and now we get to talk about some players that could potentially be in Chicago very, very soon. Starting next year, that might be some prospects for the Hurricanes to go develop in Chicago. I have to ask you, what guys are you kind of excited to see in some Chicago Wolves jerseys next season for 24-25 to hopefully for another Calder Cup run for the Chicago Wolves?
Couple of names, excuse me, that we saw for a little bit in 22 and 23, like Noel Gunler. I really enjoyed the progression of his game in Chicago. I wanted to see a little more. I was hoping to get to see a little more. I didn't, and now I'm happy to.
Yeah,
Right.
went overseas a little bit to take care of business over there in Sweden and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, but Anthony Honka was another one. A lot of guys that I'm familiar with from the last year of the affiliation. But I know they signed another young Russian netminder, and I'm a big fan of Russian netminders coming through the Kane system. So
I think I'm a big fan of those guys too. I think we got one right now that played pretty well in Chicago. That scored a goalie goal, probably tried to fight an entire team and stuff like that. He's a
won a
feisty.
Calder Cup, yeah.
Got a suspension for some taunting. we'll put it that way. So yeah, there's a little some feistiness from the Russian goalies, but yes.
But yeah, there's just a whole pool of these young players to pick from. Tuukka Tiaksalo was another one that I'd seen before, and then you got newcomers like Gleb Trikazov. Ooh, I almost butchered that one. Felix Sorum or Scott Morrow. If maybe he doesn't make the Hurricanes, well, we'd like to say we embrace him there in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, you also got Jackson Blake, Bradley in the Doe. I mean, yeah, you got some dudes possibly coming to Chicago. I mean, look at Bradley in the Doe, man. I mean, most points in a long time for the the Maine Black Bears and stuff like that. First guy hit over 40 since we're talking 05-06, and then first guy to get up near 46 points since 2014-15. Jackson Blake was a Hobie Baker finalist for North Dakota. He absolutely went off, got 60 points for them. Scott Morrow played absolutely out of his mind at UMass. Like depending on how it goes with free agency and who comes back for the Hurricanes on the blue line, Scott Morrow could be up there. But man, if you get Scott Morrow down there in Chicago,
nice.
Yeah, like I said, Bradley in the Doe, man, over 100 points at Penticton in the BCHL with the V's. I mean, you really can't go wrong with that. And the fact that his high-end skill, like they're saying his ceiling is really, really high. And I know the Chicago Wolves would be frothing at the mouth to get a guy like Bradley in the Doe and Jackson Blake up there with Chicago for sure.
Yeah, and it all boils down to getting more of that talent through the lineup and just strengthening your depth, which the Wolves just weren't able to do this season. And if they can combine a couple of those real good tool guys that showed their glimpses along with the talent that can come through the Carolina system, there's the foundation for something good coming back to Rosemont.
Yeah, no, for sure. And when you think about it too, like you got all the guys who had to go back over to Europe because there was not a lot of spots in the AHL for whatever reason. And then no one wants it. I mean, if you're a high end talent guy like that, like nothing against the ECHL, but that's kind of tough going from you're AHL level guy, but you got to play in the ECHL just because of how circumstances played out. I don't like Yanov Peretz and those guys. Okay, it makes sense, but yeah, like guys like Honka and Unger Sorum and stuff like that. Like those guys are like. That's kind of a tough spot. Now you go back to Europe, but now I'm assuming, and I know you probably think so too, I don't see why those guys wouldn't be coming back from Europe and being like, all right, we got an AHL affiliate. I know, you were just over there, but we want you back on North American ice. Like, do you see that as like, okay, it's going to have to happen because you're in Europe, but it's better to have you here in North America to get ready on North American ice?
Absolutely. I mean, you saw that their first year in Chicago, where it was better for these young players to come over, get used to the smaller ice surface and just the quicker speed that the plays are made versus how it is over in Europe. That's just the nature of it. You have less time, less space, and the smaller ice. So
bigger bodies too. I mean, nothing against Liga and SHL. Like those are like legit leagues. Up there in Sweden and Finland. But yeah, it's a whole different beast when you're talking not just NHL, the American League, man. It's AAA hockey, but oh my goodness, those guys can throw some hits, that's for sure. There are some bodies down there that could wreck shop for sure.
There's a reason you see 90% of players in the NHL today have had spent some form of time in the American League.
Yeah, it's definitely it's for me. It's not the American League is not a demotion or like it's a lesser league. It's like no, it's still a really good league. It's just it's a whole different beast, and a whole different animal. Like it's development, but there are guys who did play in the NHL or guys who spent a lot of their careers in the AHL. Andrew Podolski, who justice for Potts. Yeah, justice for Potts. But yeah, man, it's like some guys they make really great careers in the American Hockey League, like Rochester Americans, Michael Mersch. Dude's played him almost his entire career down there in the A, but he's just someone who's done business. So yeah, it's one of those things where you will get development in the A. Like I said, nothing against those leagues over in Europe, but man, the American League, it will get you ready for the NHL.
Absolutely. And that's why you see more and more teams valuing that pipeline that's coming out through the American League and the benefits of having those players going, learning the game, learning the system down there before taking their talents to the National League. And it makes for an easier transition. It's better for these younger players to figure out the tweaks of their game. And you're seeing more NHL teams just straight out owning an AHL affiliate, and that way they're even more hands-on with the whole operation. It's a little different here with Chicago being independently owned, but like I said, if everyone is holding hands and we're all dancing together to the same beat and the rhythm, then W's cure everything.
Yeah, no, 100% for sure. And I know for sure, like, once we get into the off season and kind of get closer to 24, 25, and even though next season, I know I'm going to definitely need to get you back on at least once a month, hopefully, just to kind of give a nice update. Because I know a lot of Hurricanes fans would love to hear some updates about their new but old affiliates, that is Chicago Wolves. So I guess everyone who's listened to this episode, get ready to hear more of Andrew Rinaldi's voice on Locked On Hurricanes a lot more often than this previous season for sure. But Andrew, thank you so much for jumping on, man. I know just the crazy schedule of everything that's going on with concerts and hockey, playoffs and beer leagues and all this other stuff that's going on. I know you got Grand Rapids, you got to focus on them because they're in the playoffs right now. But like I said, I just appreciate you taking the time to talk Wolves. I know we wanted to get you on super quick once I knew that like it dropped. It's like, okay, I gotta call my dude. Gotta talk about Chicago Wolves because this is it's huge. Like it's a big thing. Especially with next season, man. Wolves and Hurricanes are back together. Mom and dad are back together. There's no more breaks. So
yeah, thanks again for having me. And yeah, I mean, like I said, my first 3 years on the beat were affiliated with Carolina. I've come to very much enjoy Hurricanes fans and having the relationship back together. I get to open those doors back, and it's a great feeling, honestly. And I think it's going to be best for everyone involved.
Yeah, no, definitely for sure. Yeah, agree. Like I said, it's great to have you back on again. I know we're gonna be seeing each other a lot and stuff like that. Outside of us working together, call times, but being able to like talk, Canes, Wolves, and all that good stuff too. But before we let you go, where can people find you on the socials, and where can they find your work at?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so about your stuff.
Yeah, like here we go, some selfless self-promotion here.
Yeah.
So like yourself, I also write for the Calder Times. Clearly, Chicago Wolves beat writer. I also write for the Grand Rapids Griffins. And you can find my Twitter, my little @ is down there. That's Andrew_Rinaldi_. It's convoluted, I understand.
Yeah, kind of make it a little bit more fresh and sleek there, Andrew.
Yeah. I keep updated on the Wolves. I enjoy, live tweeting during the games. I enjoy talking with fans as long as you're not, trying to troll. And I'll even, play along with trolls for a little while. We're all having fun here at the end of the day. And, but again, I love talking the game of hockey. I love making relationships with fans. And, at the end of the day, they're the ones that I do this all for. So, it's always great to have a chat with people who enjoy, for some reason, listening to my thoughts.
I mean, hey, they're good thoughts, man. You know what you're talking about. Like you said, with your relationship with the Wolves and just being able to do what you do, man. Yeah, a lot of people definitely have to listen to you for sure. But like I said, thank you so much for joining. Everyone who is listening to the podcast, and especially you, the everydayer, thank you for making this your first listen. Thank you for all the support. We just hit 10,000 downloads on the podcast, not too early, so on Thursday. And big thank you to everyone who for the support. For the last few weeks of just being here. If you want to catch up with me, One True Zach on Twitter, also LO_Hurricanes if you want to follow the podcast. I have a link tree in my bio where you can find all my articles at, the hockey writers covering the Hurricanes, also at the Calder Times, was doing the Checkers, now moving over to the Rochester Americans, stuff like that. You can find podcasts on YouTube for the Surge Cast, and you also can find links for the podcast here at Locked On Hurricanes and on YouTube as well. And if you are on the YouTube side, make sure to hit subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss any of the new shows that come out. Also hit the thumbs up button to let me know if you like the show. Leave some comments. How do you feel about the Hurricanes, reuniting with the Chicago Wolves, and who are you excited to see in Rosemont? Like I said, Jackson Blake, Bradley Nadeau, seeing the guys coming back from Europe and all that good stuff too. And like I said, share with other Hurricanes fans, because if we get to 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube, I might do something really cool for you guys. But until then, thank you to Andrew. I'm Zach, and we'll see you next time here on Locked On Hurricanes. And as always, let's go Canes.